Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to PSR's webinar, Hydrogen Pipe Dreams, Why Burning Hydrogen in Buildings is Bad for Health and Climate. This is a presentation from the National PSR Office. I'm Barbara Gottlieb, the Program Director for Environment and Health. We could almost not have a more appropriate day for presenting this webinar since we have so much of the world that is facing really terrible climatic impacts, from heat waves and forest fires and drought to terrible floods. So many people are really feeling the climate emergency, which is now. From the US Southwest to England to Western Europe to China, the impacts are extremely severe. They threaten health and life. They threaten crops and animals, wild animals and farm animals, and they are scarring the planet. We'll find out on today's webinar how hydrogen plays into this question, why the utility companies, the gas companies especially, are promoting hydrogen as a, they call it a way of decarbonizing their operations, but you'll learn from PSR why we think that's a particularly bad idea. Our presenter today is Andi Krasner, MPH. She is, as it says on the screen, the Program Manager for Health and Climate at Greater Boston PSR. She's also a consultant to the National PSR Office and the lead author of our recent report, Hydrogen Pipe Dreams, Why Burning Hydrogen in Buildings is Bad for Health and Climate. As you can tell, that's the report from which today's presentation is drawn. Andi, besides working for both Greater Boston PSR and PSR National, has been a consultant to other organizations working at the intersection of public health, climate, and infrastructure. I'm going to turn it over to Andi in just a moment. There are a few little housekeeping details I want to go over first, but Andi's going to start us off with this question. When you think of hydrogen, what do you think of? So if you are ready, please put your answer into the chat. You can put in a word or a phrase. And in the meantime, just two other housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. The recording will be sent to you and to everyone who registered within a few days. Our audience will be kept on mute throughout the presentation, but we will have plenty of time at the end for question and answer. What we'd like to do in terms of the question and answer is to have you look at, I beg your pardon, have you put your questions into the question box. Use the chat now to tell us about hydrogen, but don't use the chat for your questions. Just use the question box so that I'll be able to follow your questions, and I'll be reading them out at the end, and Andi will be answering. I think that's all of the housekeeping. Andi, the floor is now yours. Please take it away.
Thank you, Barb. I want to just, first of all, thank everyone who has joined us this afternoon, or if you're in Hawaii and Alaska, still morning. My name is Andi Krasner, and I am the Program Manager for Climate and Health for Greater Boston Physicians for Social Responsibility. And as Barb noted, that my work has centered on air quality, climate, and the built environment. And so when hydrogen blending was proposed in Massachusetts, we began to research it, and we found that blending hydrogen is not good for air quality, climate, or for the people living and working in buildings. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see some of the, if people are putting into the chat what you think about hydrogen, if you could do that, that's very helpful to me so I can tailor the presentation for you. Barb, do you want to go ahead and put up the slides?
Are you not seeing the slides now?
No, not.
Oh, my mistake. Okay, well, give me just a moment. I'll have to figure out why I'm not screen sharing. And I'll want to share my screen. Just give me a moment. Are you seeing my slides now?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, and here is that prompt that Andi wanted us to see. Shall we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, let's go to the next slide.
Okay, thank you.
So the one thing that I want you to remember from today's talk, just like the screwdriver in the picture is the wrong tool for the job, hydrogen is the wrong tool for reducing emissions in buildings. And just like the screwdriver sounds like it should be the right tool, it's certainly the right name, it's a screwdriver after all, hydrogen sounds like it should work, but it doesn't. And we're going to talk about that. Next slide. For me, understanding context is always important. So why are we talking about hydrogen this afternoon and not some other pressing topic? And the short answer comes down to one word: methane. We are in a climate crisis, which most of you on the phone already are well aware of. And that climate crisis is causing a health emergency. 100 health and public health organizations have declared that the climate crisis is a health emergency, and we're seeing a lot of that today on the news. Burning fossil fuels like methane gas is driving the climate crisis. But it's not just the burning of fossil fuels that's driving this crisis, it's also the leaking of methane gas. When leaked into the atmosphere, it's more than 80 times more warming than carbon dioxide. And there are some studies that have shown that natural gas is as bad as coal for the climate. The latest IPCC report states that we must reduce fossil fuel use quickly, which most people know, but they specifically name methane as an important gas to focus our reduction efforts on. And at the national level, the US has rejoined the Paris Agreement and committed to reducing methane emissions, specifically methane, by 30% by 2030. So gas utilities and natural gas companies are being forced to grapple with state and national emissions reduction targets and a growing recognition that reducing methane leakage is an important mitigation strategy in addressing the climate crisis. Next slide. So to meet state and national targets, gas utilities will need to scale back methane gas expansion and current levels of delivery. They have invested billions of dollars in infrastructure, and expanding that infrastructure is one of their primary income sources. So their goal is to figure out how to maintain and expand gas infrastructure, at the same time assuring regulators that they can do that while reducing emissions. This slide that you're looking at is actually from Eversource Energy. And you can see that they are proposing a clean gas pathway, and I put that in quotes, and hydrogen is an important part of that. But the facts about hydrogen don't support this rosy future that they're promising. It's not really going to reduce emissions. Clean hydrogen is anything but clean, and it's actually made from methane. Next slide. So what is hydrogen gas and how is it actually made? Hydrogen is the most abundant molecule in the universe, but there's actually very little hydrogen gas. Hydrogen is almost entirely found in other chemical compounds like methane, which is the top picture there, and water, which is the bottom picture there. To make hydrogen gas, energy is used to separate the hydrogen from these other compounds like methane and water so that the hydrogen can bond with itself as a gas. Next slide. When you burn hydrogen, it doesn't emit any carbon dioxide. And for this reason, it's often called non-emitting because it only produces, its only products when burned are water and nitrogen oxides. But burning is really the end of the story when it comes to gas. Let's look at the backstory. How is it produced and what are the emissions from its production? That's really where the story is. Next slide. So hydrogen is very much like electricity. You can produce it with clean energy, or you can produce it with fossil fuels like methane or coal. There are three main pathways to make hydrogen gas, and hydrogen is named differently for each method of production. There's gray hydrogen, blue, and green. There's actually many other colors, but we're going to focus on those three because they're the most common. Gray hydrogen is made from methane using steam methane reformation. And there's a picture of that here that you're looking at. Methane is transported to the SMR plant along the way it leaks. As you can see, there's like an orange arrow at the bottom showing methane gases and methane leaks. In SMR, methane reacts with steam under pressure to produce hydrogen and carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. And you can see the carbon dioxide coming out at the top of that building there. The process requires, obviously, continued use of methane. Next slide. Blue hydrogen is gray hydrogen coupled with carbon capture and storage or reuse of carbon dioxide. There are two drawbacks to carbon capture, at least two, there's probably more. But first of all, the technology that we have now, it doesn't capture enough carbon to make blue hydrogen much better than gray hydrogen. And secondly, it doesn't capture the methane that leaks from the wellheads and along the pipelines to the SMR plants. And that methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. Next slide. So green hydrogen is made with an electrolyzer through a process known as electrolysis, which uses electricity to separate water into hydrogen and oxygen. When it uses 100% renewable electricity to do this, it is a zero carbon emissions fuel and truly renewable. Next slide. The problem is that 99% of hydrogen produced in the United States today is made from fossil fuels. While we are very excited that more green hydrogen is coming online, it isn't available yet. And when it does become available, it will be incredibly precious. It's the energy equivalent of caviar. Next slide. So how do we use the hydrogen that we make now? The gray and brown hydrogen and some blue. Hydrogen is a key ingredient in fertilizer, which we need for stable food production. It's also used in oil refining and as a chemical feedstock for other important things like methanol, which is in turn turned into many products that we're familiar with, like plywood subfloors, solvents, and windshield washer fluid. Next slide. The global carbon impact of the hydrogen that we currently make right now is the equivalent of the amount of carbon dioxide from California 2 times over. It's 830 million tons of carbon dioxide per year. So it has an enormous impact already. What we really need to do is to reduce the carbon impact of our current use of hydrogen use, not expand it into blending with methane. We want to use our green hydrogen to replace this gray hydrogen, for which our economy is already dependent. We don't want to expand the use of fossil-derived hydrogen into a new market for blending with methane gas. Next slide. So hydrogen is the wrong tool for reducing emissions in buildings, and we're going to get into all the reasons why. But just to give you an overview, it's actually going to increase greenhouse gases. We will lock in methane gas for heating buildings for years to come instead of transitioning to electric appliances. We will waste renewable energy that could be used more efficiently elsewhere. And we are going to increase the cost for utility ratepayers. And of course, like with any type of flammable fuel, you're going to have safety and health issues.
So Andy, just a question here before we get on to all these other topics. Let's make sure that I've understood correctly. What I've heard you saying is that hydrogen exists, but it exists in compounds with other things. So it's in water, it's in methane. And in order to be able to use the hydrogen, we have to break it down by any of a variety of ways. And only one of those ways doesn't badly impact the environment, which is to say green hydrogen. And then on the other hand, green hydrogen is incredibly scarce. There's really, from what you say, hardly any of it is available. So it's kind of a false solution. Do I have that right?
That's right, Barb. Because the byproducts of burned hydrogen are only water and nitrogen oxides, it sounds like a clean fuel. But in reality, it's produced with dirty fuels like methane gas 99% of the time.
Not good. Okay, just wanted
Not
to
good.
check on that. Ready for the next slide?
Yeah, next slide.
Okay.
So blending hydrogen with methane gas will increase greenhouse gases. We've said that several times, but it's something that we really want you to remember at the end of this presentation. Next slide. This graph is from a peer-reviewed paper. The yellow bars represent carbon dioxide and the orange bars represent methane. So if you look at the bottom, you'll see that there's gray hydrogen, blue hydrogen, two different types of blue hydrogen, natural gas, diesel oil, and coal. And when you look at the greenhouse gas footprint per unit of heat energy, you can see that blue hydrogen is barely better than gray hydrogen and is actually worse than natural gas, diesel, and coal. Next slide. Furthermore, the use of hydrogen in pipelines can cause new and larger leaks in pipelines, which we already know contributes to a significant part of our greenhouse gases. Several peer-reviewed papers have found that gas leaks are already worse than what's reported to the EPA. And by introducing hydrogen, which can make these cracks bigger and even more of them, it's going to make the problem worse. Next slide. And while burned hydrogen does not emit any carbon dioxide, should hydrogen actually leak from the pipes into the atmosphere, it can also impact warming. Its global warming potential is estimated to be 5 to 11 times more warming than carbon dioxide over a 100-year period and 30 times more warming over a 20-year scale. Next slide. Fossil hydrogen used for heating will also lock in natural gas used to heat buildings for decades. Hydrogen blending allows the gas industry to significantly expand the demand for fossil hydrogen where it has never been used before. And consequently, it's going to increase the demand for the methane gas to make it. And I'll get into this a little bit more, but gas companies are limited for safety reasons to blending hydrogen at 20% by volume. This leaves the system 80% methane. Next slide. This is a full page ad that ran in the Boston Globe promoting the use of fossil-free gas, otherwise known as hydrogen. They assure, it's a very long ad and I cut most of it off, but they assure the public that methane is going to be decarbonized because when hydrogen is burned, it doesn't emit carbon. But remember, it's the greenhouse gases that are emitted during the production of hydrogen that make it so bad for the climate, not the burning of it. And so in reality, the gas industry will use more methane to make fossil hydrogen than to deliver methane directly to heat buildings and expand unabated the nation's reliance on methane gas for heating buildings at a time when we really need to move to electric appliances in buildings. Barb, did you want to jump in?
Well, I just think this is an important slide to comment on. So green hydrogen is valid. I mean, one of the important things for our audience to understand is that PSR does not oppose the use of hydrogen across the board. There certainly are uses for hydrogen that would be very positive, especially in those sectors of industry that we can't readily electrify. PSR, as you probably know, supports building electrification, meaning replacing gas in your furnace, gas in your stove with electric appliances that use renewable energy. But there are a lot of other things that we cannot use, that we cannot electrify, such as long haul trucks, airplanes, steel making. So there is use for hydrogen but we need to reserve the green hydrogen for those purposes and not use it in our furnaces, in our stoves, where we really do have, as both Andy and I have mentioned, real alternatives.
Yeah, so green hydrogen is great, but there are limitations to using it for blending with methane and for heating. And those limitations are that, number one, that there is no green hydrogen available. The US government is committed to ramping up the availability of green hydrogen and to bringing down the price. They have a goal to bring the price down to $1 per kilogram by 2030. But even those projects that are planned to come online won't be enough green hydrogen to replace all the gray hydrogen that is needed. And that demand for gray hydrogen is continuing to increase. So that demand for additional green hydrogen to replace it also is increasing. If we use renewable energy to make green hydrogen, there can be a trade-off. Those renewables don't get used to green the grid. And we need to build a lot more renewables, 3 to 4 times as much, to use hydrogen to heat homes compared to electricity for heating homes. And remember, hydrogen can add to global warming if it leaks from pipelines, even if it is green hydrogen. Next slide. And the other limitation is that even if we had enough green hydrogen to blend at 20% by volume safely, it would only reduce greenhouse gases by 6%. So let me step back and kind of explain this a little bit. Hydrogen does have the highest energy content by weight of any fuel, but it has a very low density. So it requires a greater physical volume for the same energy as other fuels. So you need more than 2 times the volume of hydrogen than methane to deliver that same amount of energy. This low density means a hydrogen blend of 20% by volume only equates to about 7% of the amount of energy and 6% of greenhouse gas reduction. And that's the most. 6% of greenhouse gas reductions is the most it would be, because if there are any more leaks of methane or hydrogen into the atmosphere, those reductions will be offset by those other leaks. Next slide. So once we get to more than 20% blending of hydrogen, you actually have to replace all of the appliances, because hydrogen, gas appliances are not compatible to burn high blends of hydrogen with methane or 100% hydrogen. So after 20%, you're going to have to replace all the electric appliances. And so when we look into the future and we think about efficiency, what do we want to heat our homes with? Do we want hydrogen burning boilers, or do we want electric heat pumps? It's important to think about efficiency. So if you have 100 units of energy and you send that 100 units of energy for a hydrogen boiler, you will only get 46 units of work out of it. If you have 100 units of energy and you send that to an electric heat pump, you get 270 units of work out of it. So because electric heat pumps are so efficient, they're 5 to 6 times more efficient than hydrogen. It makes a lot more sense to be using these electric heat pumps. Remember when I said that green hydrogen's like caviar? Using it to blend with natural gas is really like throwing caviar in soup. We really have better ways to use green hydrogen than to blend it. And we have better ways to use the renewables from which it's made. Next slide. So like I said before, hydrogen does play a role in our low carbon economy, and an evaluation was done of all uses of hydrogen, and the uses were ranked from necessary to uncompetitive. As you can see, fertilizers, the possibility of aviation, shipping, and energy storage uses of hydrogen are efficient uses. Uncompetitive uses include domestic heating, metro trains and buses, and rural trains, among other things. So why are gas companies and gas utilities all over the US pushing hydrogen? Well, because it helps their bottom line to expand the use of hydrogen, which is only used in industrial sectors right now. And then by increasing that demand for hydrogen, the demand for natural gas increases because you're going to have to use blue hydrogen or gray hydrogen because there's no green hydrogen available. And as natural gas becomes more unpopular, hydrogen gives natural gas a new name. It can be called clean gas, and it's a new way to stay in business. Essentially, they can sell us more Phillips screwdrivers to unsuspecting customers.
So here, I think we were about to move into a new section. Andy, if we can just sum up what you were just saying, it's not just that we don't have the green hydrogen, it's that there really are actually drawbacks to green hydrogen, even though it seems like it might be a good option for certain uses. So we can embrace green hydrogen, up to a point, and perhaps with some caveats. That's caveats, not caviar. But we're really better off with electrification, right?
Yeah, there's too many limitations with blending hydrogen into methane to heat buildings, and we're better off to use this very precious resource to displace the gray hydrogen that we already need, and our economy is already dependent upon. So, unlike using electricity to heat buildings, hydrogen poses health and safety risks. Next slide. You have to understand that hydrogen is a different gas than methane. It burns hotter, it has a faster flame. Hydrogen ignites more easily and is more explosive than methane. There are 120 million households in the United States. 30% of them cook on a gas stove. Not one of these gas stoves in people's homes today were designed to burn hydrogen or a blend of methane and hydrogen. So what we've learned from, and moreover, what we've learned from a recent Stanford and Harvard studies is that these gas stoves leak methane even when they're turned off. So if we start putting hydrogen into that mix, we're also going to get a leak of hydrogen and methane, which is much more dangerous because hydrogen is a more dangerous gas. And this is when you go beyond 25% hydrogen in fuel, in most places in the world, you're no longer going to be able to use that same equipment. Electronics, for example, must be explosion proof. This is what they want to send. They want to send a very explosive gas into people's homes to use in their stoves and their furnaces, and it's a really bad idea. Next slide. Hydrogen blending also increases the risk of flashbacks. Now, a flashback is when a flame is quickly extinguished, but the gas continues to build up. And flashbacks can lead to appliance shutdown. In the best case, they can damage the appliance, and then they are a safety hazard because it can lead to gas leaks in enclosed areas. And because hydrogen can ignite in almost any air to gas ratio, it can mean an unintended fire or an explosion. Next slide. So we know that burning fossil fuels in homes and in buildings in general contributes to indoor and outdoor air pollution. Using a gas stove without ventilation can lead to nitrogen dioxide levels that exceed health-based standards set for outdoor air. And pollution from boilers, furnaces, and water heaters or gas dryers, they're vented to the outdoors and contribute to outdoor air pollution. And new data shows that the fracked gas has a number of carcinogens in it, like benzene and toluene, and that those leak inside the house even when the appliances are off. So the methane that we're currently using to heat homes and for cooking is really bad for indoor and outdoor air pollution. So let's go to the next slide and think about what happens when we blend 20% hydrogen. We are still left with 80% methane. So all of the health impacts that we get from methane will continue to exist and perpetuate existing inequities driven by air pollution and burning fossil fuels in buildings. Buildings will continue to emit nitrogen oxides and particulate matter, both of which are known to exacerbate asthma and increase the incidence of asthma. Burning fossil fuels in buildings is already incredibly expensive in terms of health. A study from Harvard found that the residential and commercial sector is responsible for $205 billion in premature mortality. And this is an undercount of the actual true impacts because they didn't actually account for the healthcare costs of diseases like asthma. Next slide. So, what happens when we add hydrogen to the mix? Well, nitrogen dioxide is one of the main air pollutants that comes from steam methane reformation. And so as the production of blue and gray hydrogen ramps up, so will the nitrogen oxide. And outdoors, nitrogen oxides are a precursor in the formation of particulate matter. And like I said, both worsen asthma. When burned, 100% hydrogen releases 6 times more nitrogen oxides compared to 100% methane. As blend rates increase, nitrogen oxides from gas appliances will likely increase. Now, this gets complicated because we don't know exactly how the blending will affect the nitrogen oxide levels from all types of appliances. Studies are still being done. The burner type, how the air and fuel are mixed, and blending rates, and ultimately the temperature of the flame all contribute to how much NOx is formed. So it's hard to say exactly how much more it will increase. Next slide. I think it's important to remember that Black people and people of color are disproportionately exposed to indoor and outdoor air pollution from buildings. And people exposed to high levels of air pollution disproportionately get sick, miss school days, work days, and have underlying illnesses. So from a health standpoint, blending hydrogen doesn't make any inroads into a just transition to health equity. This is in contrast to electrifying buildings, which improves indoor and outdoor air quality. Next slide. The climate crisis affects mental and physical health in every way, from food security to severe weather events that displace people, heat-related illnesses like we're seeing today across Europe, to particulate matter from fires and more. Health inequities are magnified by climate change, making the reduction in greenhouse gases a necessary element of any of our health equity goals. Unfortunately, hydrogen increases greenhouse gases and will make these disparities worse.
You know, before you go on, Andy, I just wanted to comment on 2 things. First of all, I cannot get out of my mind what you were telling us a moment ago about the volatility of hydrogen, how readily it burns, and you said something about it can burn even almost regardless of the hydrogen to air percentage mixture, and this is what they want to send into our homes. Adding to that, the fact that our gas stoves leak even when turned off. So even if when they're turned off, we would be leaking not only methane, but also hydrogen into our homes. That's a pretty scary scenario. I also wanted to underscore the point you were making about the inequities of how hydrogen and other pollutants affect populations. Those populations that are already bearing a disproportionate burden of health are likely to be particularly affected as well as they are by gas stoves, and then as they would be by the introduction of hydrogen. So pretty sobering facts. Thank you. Let's go on and see. So obviously, you know, health There are plenty of health associated costs. You're about to tell us about a new kind of cost. Let's go on and hear about that.
That's right, Barb. Hydrogen is less safe and less healthy than electric appliances, and there's just no compelling reason why we should use hydrogen and methane to heat buildings when electricity is more efficient, it's better for the climate, it's superior in terms of health equity, and safety. And as you alluded to, Barb, it's actually more expensive. So if you can believe it, the sad thing about hydrogen is that it increases greenhouse gases, it's more explosive, it increases nitrogen oxides. And with all of that, you think that it must be less expensive than electrification, but it's not. The cost of making fossil hydrogen will actually always be more expensive than the methane from which it's produced. So gray hydrogen is the least expensive. Blue hydrogen is obviously more expensive because you've got to try to capture all that carbon dioxide and store it somewhere. And green hydrogen right now is the most expensive, 3 to 4 times more than gray hydrogen. Now, we hope that those costs will come down in the future, but right now, green hydrogen is actually the most expensive. Next slide. In a study done for California by E3, they estimated that blending hydrogen and synthetic gas, which is actually methane made from hydrogen, that it would actually increase gas bills by 8 to 15 times, and so that they would be 8 to 15 times higher than methane alone, which is an incredible amount. It's just staggering how much more expensive that is. Next slide.
I would just say, especially at a time now when we were already facing such high rates of inflation.
Yes. So at blends above 20%, I mentioned this, you can only blend hydrogen at 20% by volume safely. So after that, you're going to have to replace all your appliances, furnaces, boilers, water heaters, gas dryers, and gas stoves if the blending exceeds 20%, so that they can safely burn hydrogen. Natural gas appliances were designed to burn methane gas. And it's really important to understand that they were not designed to burn hydrogen. And so we would have to replace them all at a huge expense to consumers. Next slide. So the most cost-effective, healthy, lowest emissions path is to use our green hydrogen for hard to electrify industrial processes, and to invest in electric options like heat pumps for heating and cooling buildings. Next slide. In conclusion, the gas companies and gas utilities are selling us the wrong tool for the job. Hydrogen on its face sounds great. It sounds like it's the screwdriver, right? We're told that it's carbon-free fuel, it's a fossil-free fuel, it's a clean fuel, and that there are no emissions when burned. But upon further inspection, we find that producing it and transporting it in pipelines actually increases greenhouse gases. Hydrogen gives cover to expanding the methane gas system, when what we need to do is stop burning methane in buildings and replace it with electrical appliances. Green hydrogen is like caviar. Let's not throw it into the proverbial soup by blending it. Use it to replace gray hydrogen and decarbonize hard to electrify sectors like aviation and shipping. Next slide. Before I end, I do want to thank you all again for joining us. I know that this is a topic that not many people are yet interested in, but they should be. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the Hydrogen Subcommittee of the Gas Leaks Allies in Massachusetts. I have been a part of that subcommittee. We have had many discussions over the past year, and those helped me frame this report. I just want to thank everyone who is a part of that subcommittee for their help. And there were a few of the people in that subcommittee who gave feedback to early versions of this report, and I would like to acknowledge and say thank you to them. And I would also like to thank my co-author, Barb Gottlieb, who is a fantastic writing partner. It was a great experience. And I think I'd like to take some questions now.
Well, thank you, Andy, for a wonderful presentation. And hydrogen, it is for many of us an unfamiliar topic. It's a technical topic. There are so many different ways of looking at it. And, we can be fooled because, as you mentioned early on, hydrogen at the point of combustion may not really be the problem. We really need to step back and take a larger view and look at what hydrogen is and where it comes from. So we will now open it up to question and answer. If people will give me just a minute. We have a few questions here. So the first one is very brief. It just says the Hindenburg disaster. Andy, can you let our listeners know, our viewers know what the Hindenburg disaster was, if people don't remember?
Oh gosh, yeah, the Hindenburg. It looks like a large float. I can't even remember what it's called, but it exploded. Because of the use of hydrogen. So it just is one of those historical references where we remember how explosive hydrogen is.
Yeah, they called it an airship, right? It was
an airship. Yeah, thank you.
An enormous balloon, if you will, filled with hydrogen and carrying a little gondola of passengers. And unfortunately, well, hydrogen being as volatile as it is, it blew up. It was a real disaster. A couple of people have told us that the chat seemed to be disabled. I totally apologize for that. I don't know what the story is, but if you weren't able to put in your thoughts about what you knew about hydrogen, they've all been transformed by now, I'm sure, because of all that we've learned from Andy. Here's another question. It says, does green hydrogen have the same fire and explosion risks?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, hydrogen, green, the colors refer to how hydrogen is produced, whether that hydrogen gas, those two hydrogen molecules that are bonded, how it's produced, whether it comes from methane or water or coal. So the color green, gray, and blue refers to how it's produced. The hydrogen gas itself, the hydrogen gas, all has the same physical properties of hydrogen gas. So it's as explosive as blue or gray hydrogen. Okay.
Here are two questions about NOx, or not nitrogen oxides. One is, why does burning hydrogen create nitrogen dioxide pollution if there's no nitrogen in hydrogen?
That's a great question. So hydrogen actually burns hotter than methane, and it's the heat that contributes to the amount of NOx that you get. So we have nitrogen in our air, and so when you heat that nitrogen up with oxygen, then you get NOx.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question is this: is nitrogen dioxide really a problem? I have heard that nitrogen oxide emissions from hydrogen blending can be controlled.
It's true. Just like on school buses, there are low NOx controls that can be adopted for appliances. It's not clear that they're going to work on high blends of hydrogen, those that exceed 30%. We don't really have any information about those. And the other thing is that when you adopt low NOx technologies, they cost money. So the risk is that they would only be adopted on high-end appliances, only benefiting the wealthiest households.
Another environmental injustice, as there are so many associated with fossil fuels. Here's another question. What's the connection to which you alluded between the methane production / burning's emission of nitrogen oxides to particulate matter? Sounded like cause and effect.
Oh, sorry. So when you burn hydrogen, you get more nitrogen oxides, and nitrogen oxides in outdoor pollution are a precursor to particulate matter. So when they combine with volatile organic compounds and sunshine, you get particulate matter.
Thank you. Does transporting hydrogen via pipelines require special pipes?
So The pipelines that can best transport hydrogen are plastics, because what if you put them in steel or cast iron, they cause these additional cracks in the pipes. So pipelines would need to be plastic, and they'd also need to be larger than they are now, because remember, hydrogen, you have to transport a larger volume of hydrogen. So you would need larger pipes, and you also need larger compressor stations, because you need much more energy to compress that lighter air, the distances that it needs to go. So all of that means that we would have to replace our current infrastructure with hydrogen compatible infrastructure.
Because, Andy, isn't it the case that the large pipelines, the transport pipelines, actually now are metal, and it's only the ones perhaps close to the home, the distribution lines, that would be plastic? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you are in the country, but yes, generally indoors, once you're beyond the meter, you would have plastic pipes, but you still have polymers at the joints, and hydrogen can even degrade those polymers at the joints, so you still get leaks.
Okay, no win there. Here's another question. If there were enough renewables to make green hydrogen, then to green the grid, it seems like blending would help.
Yes, remember we talked about if we had as many renewables as we could get onto the grid, and we had 100% clean grid, and we had excess renewables, and we had plenty of green hydrogen, should we blend it? And the answer is really no, because it still leaks from pipelines. It's still very unsafe, and it's still very inefficient. So it's better to electrify than to waste those renewables on making hydrogen that would be blended.
Okay. Here's a question. Many households depend on natural gas for heating and cooking. We can't just turn off gas. Doesn't green hydrogen help a little?
So blending hydrogen or renewable natural gas, which is also methane, it's often proposed with hydrogen, is only one pathway that we can go down. Now, this seems to be the pathway that gas utilities propose most often, but we can choose to adopt network ground source heat pumps, which are connected. They're called the geogrid. And this allows gas utilities to deliver heat without going out of business. So there are other options for gas utilities that can be explored and are being explored across the nation.
Well, Andy didn't mention that, but she is very involved with a geogrid experiment now going on in Massachusetts, a pilot project that is being developed. Andy, we'll have to get you back on when that project has completed and has some findings to tell us about the geogrid. It's an exciting possible potential future solution or partial solution to our need to replace methane.
Yeah, I really have to give all the credit to HEAT, which is a nonprofit organization in Massachusetts. They've really been leading the charge on the geogrid and doing all of the research on it.
Well, we'll look forward to hearing from them too in the future. We have one more question. It says, I read that in the UK, they are using 100% hydrogen in homes. Can you comment?
That actually is true. There is a demonstration project in the UK that uses 100% hydrogen. The appliances were designed to burn hydrogen, and so they're safer than burning hydrogen in appliances that were designed to burn methane. So remember, to do that in the United States, every gas burning appliance would have to be retrofitted or replaced to burn hydrogen, and it would have to be done all at once, because when they switch from methane to 100% hydrogen, all those appliances would have to be in place. Unlike electric appliances, which you can replace old gas appliances as they age, and all the electric appliances are just much safer. You're not dealing with an explosive gas. You're not dealing with burning a gas indoors where you get more air pollution.
Here's one more question. How would hydrogen used for aviation be safe?
You know, I am not an engineer working on this particular problem, but I think it's similar in the way that using hydrogen in cars is safe. We have fuel cells, and these fuel cells are used to change hydrogen chemically to energy. And so I think that something similar to that would be used for aviation. So you're not actually burning the fuel in the airplane, but you're using this chemical change to get that energy out.
Well, I think it's about time for us to start wrapping up. Andy, I just want to thank you again. It's such a complex, kind of multi-headed issue, but I hope that we're all clear on some of the really basic points. One is that blending hydrogen with methane would prolong our use of methane, both as an element in the blend, but also for a long time, for the foreseeable future, as a source of hydrogen. This means we keep on fracking, we keep on contaminating the environment where fracking takes place, we see more leakage of methane, we keep on accelerating climate change. A second point, green hydrogen sounds really good, but there isn't nearly enough to meet the need. And what there is should be saved for those hard to electrify industries. And then finally, I think what I say is the third big takeaway is that burning hydrogen or blending hydrogen with methane and burning them together in our homes, in our furnaces and in our kitchens, it's hard on households, both because it's dangerous and because it might require all of us to make those major expenditures buying new stoves and furnaces. Not too many of us have that kind of pocket change lying around in our pockets or in our bank accounts. And these are hard times for a lot of families, especially for low-income families, but again, with rising inflation for a lot of middle-income households as well. So hydrogen seems like a pretty poor deal. With gas being promoted as a so-called solution by utilities and gas companies in many parts of the country, it's really incumbent on all of us to challenge the utility companies' false narrative. We really have to push back against these efforts to use hydrogen and methane for cooking, heating, and other uses in the homes. So if you see those efforts where you live, please respond. At the very least, tell your family, tell your neighbors, tell your coworkers why it's such a bad idea. If you see it in the newspaper, write a letter to the editor and share this information. And you could also, if you're a member of, I know so many of PSR's members are members of other organizations as well, both health groups and environmental groups, ask those groups to join you in pushing back. And if they would like to have a presentation by Andy about hydrogen, I'm sure that we could arrange that. If you need more information, of course, you'll be getting in the next few days a link to the recording of today's presentation. You can look for more information on PSR's website, or you can email me, Barbara Gottlieb, at bgottlieb@psr.org. I was not able to share with you the link to our report on hydrogen pipe dreams, but it is also available on our website. That's very simple, psr.org. You can look for it there. So thanks to everybody. Stay safe, stay cool, and let's all keep on fighting for a livable planet. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.